kind of a total immersion in the cycling scene for 4 or 5 days is what it is. And it consists of, first, of course, riding your bicycle. And it has the advantage of getting you into a territory or an area that you haven't been before, with rides laid out by the local experts. So you're getting kind of the cream of the riding in a particular area. And then after you've done your mileage or what have you, then you come back, and then there are workshops of virtually every particular phase of cycling that you could possibly imagine, from health, nutrition, to building a bike, to advocacy of, and so on. And then in the evening we get together and we have fun with cyclists.
We'll talk a little bit about night visibility as well. I said earlier that white is definitely not enough. It's been demonstrated repeatedly in the research, and indeed it's a huge myth that you should wear white at night. In a pinch, white is better than anything dark. Fluorescence does not work at night. Don't wear anything fluorescent at night. It won't do you any good. What will do you good is anything retro-reflective. Many tiny prisms that bounce bike back at many angles, and in this case it's a whole waist band, fairly effective. Obviously you don't want children out doing much at night. This kind of a shirt, which is, let me see how solid this is. See if this works. Can you see the shirt I'm wearing? Does this band light up with those of you directly behind the projector? No. It doesn't, okay. This is how it will stand out with a headlamp, okay? Very, very bright. What you're dealing with is tens of thousands of tiny glass beads impregnated in the ink of the fabric, okay? So where the white shirt under a strobe will pulse a bit, look what the fluorescence will do in contrast. And likewise, anything, a leg band, an arm band, many devices will work very well.
Bikes look the same. They still got the handlebars and pedals. But back in '36 they wore black suits, brown suits, white shirts, ties, fedora hats, and Oxford shoes to go on a bicycle trail. And the women wore stockings and Cuban heels and skirts and hats and white gloves. Now you come and see all this color. It's fantastic.
There are actually about 40 different firms in Japan that manufacture bicycle parking equipment of a whole variety of ingenious designs, primarily for the market at transit stations. And there are various systems that are like the dry cleaner racks that you go in, you know, and you kind of hang your bicycle on a hook, and then it goes along this big long loop and up into a big building. And then, you know, when you want to get your bike back, you know, they wheel them around until your bike comes out and you pull it off the hook. All kinds of bizarre designs. And then
tandems and long wheelbase recumbent.
Well, you've got to have special parking for that. You pay double the rate, you know. But there, you know, a lot of it's very simple ground level parking with a simple cover over the top. But where you've got higher densities, land is very scarce in Japan, especially around the railway stations. And so they tend to build a lot of high density parking in areas that have a lot of intense development activity. You know, very simple. Here's a 2-story bicycle parking garage. Now this is one of the sort of the most high-tech bicycle parking garages that I've seen in Japan. This is at Kasukabe City, similar to that very big building that you saw a couple slides back. And it's a building. It holds 1,500 bicycles. It has, oh, and actually these are in a little backwards. Let me, okay, start here. You have 50 of these entryway gates into which you put your bicycle up into a hook. There are a whole series of these hooks that are on each of these gates, and you cradle the handlebar in one of these little claw hooks, and then you turn a key that locks the hook around the handlebar. And then as you pull the key out, it alerts the computer that a bike is waiting to be picked up and put into storage. And attached to that key is a little plastic card with a magnetic strip on it, about half the size of a credit card. Well, then as soon as you pull the key out, the computer is alerted, the gate opens up, this robot crane with all this fancy hydraulic gear grabs the hook and pulls your bicycle in by the hook and puts it up in one of the 1,500 storage slots in this 12-story structure. It stores the bike and remembers where it is. Then you come back at the end of the day, you run this little plastic card with a magnetic strip through the card reader here, and then it tells you what your fare is, your parking fare, and it's about 40 cents a day, or you can get it cheaper if you buy it by the month. And then it tells you which gate your bicycle will come back out to within a minute or two. And then you unlock the bike and ride off into the horizon. Yes?
There's one problem with that. Like, one of my bikes has a whole bunch of ham radio antennas on, ham radio gear on it. There doesn't seem to be much vertical space.
For that special bikes, you got to pay for premium parking. That's the way it works.
Evanston, Illinois. Where are you from?
Evanston, Illinois, but I've been here before. I love it here.
Yeah, it's beautiful out here.
Good ice cream.
The 3 couples of us here are here to do this, and then we're going to go up and ride the San Juan Island. And then we're going to go back across the Northern Tier route, like Centennial's Northern Tier route, with our vans, and we're going to stop and ride selected areas, specifically the glacier going to the Sun Highway.
We're having a problem with our structure and how to delegate. So we came here for some ideas. We have our newsletter editor here. He's coming up with some great ideas for our newsletter. This only could be a positive experience. And the rides was great. The rides are really great. We went on this ride today. It was just an excellent ride.
I'm from Wichita, Kansas. We're here with the family. We've got 2 Kansans with children on the back. Yeah, this is my Stoker, who's all worn out after her 50-mile ride.
We're a part of the group that's going to go up to spend some time in Seattle and then up to San Juan Island and then follow the Northern Tier route back in our vans. We rode it last year. 3 of us did on our bicycle, self-contained. So we're going to show our wives what it looks like.
We're doing bike rally.
Where are you from?
Dayton, Ohio, Kansas.
And where are you from? Tell them where you're from.
Ohio.
Yeah, tell them where you're from.
Tulsa, and I ride the Kingdom.
Is an opportunity for you to be in a tremendously bicycle-friendly environment with people who love to ride bicycles. I think it's natural for a person to seek out an affinity relationships in our society, and certainly one reason for riding bicycles is to be a part of a group of individuals who enjoy doing something that's healthful and fun. There's another thing about bicyclists in that they're very much into their equipment, and they like to show off their bikes and they like to see what other people have, and coming to a rally is about the best way to do that. But it's just a wonderfully marvelous social occasion It's an opportunity for people to meet new friends and to see old friends, talk about all the good times that they've had over the years past. And it's just a very reaffirming kind of experience. And I think that if an individual is at all socially minded and rides a bike, I don't think they're going to find a better experience than to come to a rally.
Welcome to Thurston County. Welcome to the state of Washington. Welcome to the League of American Wheelmen's 1991 National Rally. Welcome to the National Congress of Cyclists. Welcome to Probike Northwest 91. And welcome to the Hams Capital Lake Fair Criterium. My name is Jim Lazar. I am the chairman of the steering committee for the Summer Festival of Bicycling here. This is kind of an unusual event. Probike Northwest 91 was already committed 2 years ago. As many of you who were at last year's National Rally know, it was announced that there was no site for the 91 National Rally. We already know that it's in Wisconsin next year, which means that my successor has a little more time than I had to make even more mistakes than I've had the opportunity to make. We had a short period of time. We have a small club, but we have a great area for bicycling. And I think those of you who have been out already have an appreciation for that. We have a great theme. We are here to celebrate the role of bicycling in our world transportation system. I'll admit it's partly a personal goal of mine to get more involvement of recreational cyclists in the advocacy of sustainable transportation systems.
In many ways, the bicycle represents how we should be treating the earth and each other. Riding our bikes is a statement against waste. It doesn't cost much money, takes up very little space. It requires no fuel other than our most recent meal. The bicycle is a gentle technology, not one of an aggression. You don't see many cyclists displaying signs telling everybody else to back off. A bicycle is a vehicle for empowering people, not overpowering. And I think that we will all carry with us for a long time coming those images from 2 years ago where thousands of cyclists pedaled their way into Tiananmen Square to make their statement for freedom. And they stood there with their bicycles, making their statement for nonviolence, even as army tanks rolled toward them. I'm glad to see that cyclists in this country are becoming more political about cycling, because pedaling is political. We need to push our policymakers to include us as a legitimate and equal part of the transportation system. And we're getting there. More and more cities and towns have bicycle coordinators, and many of them are here with us tonight. And it's these bicycle coordinators that are doing a lot to make our communities more bicycle friendly. You national activists for the bicycle have firmly planted the bicycle on the public agenda and on the agenda of Congress. There are several members of Congress now who are pushing legislation to get more public investment in bicycles. Recently, you national activists at the Bicycle Federation and LAW and others have persuaded the Federal Highway Administration to create a full-time position for a bicycle manager. Now even the cycling magazines and even the bicycle manufacturers are actively promoting pro-bike policies. And this is the direction we should be going. And what is our message? The message is that when you and I ride our bicycles, especially instead of driving a car, we make things better for everyone. And it's not as if we're making a big sacrifice. I don't think that any one of us feels put out that we travel around cheaply and conveniently while getting exercise and being outdoors. It's not that we want a pat on the back. We just want some legitimacy. Because in politics, the surest way to kill a cause is to make it look trivial. Now more than ever, it's time for us to tell everyone that when we demand more public investment in bicycle transportation, it's not just about getting safer bicycling routes and more bike racks. It's about giving the next generation breathable air, a stable climate, and it's about getting freedom from further bloody international conflicts over oil. In the United States, we're certainly well equipped to become a cycling society. Per person, we have more bikes than China. And in the last 5 years alone, the number of bicycle commuters in our country has doubled. A recent Lewis Harris poll that was taken nationwide found that even though only 1 in 60 Americans commuting to work is commuting on a bicycle, 1 out of every 5 American commuters would be willing to commute by bike if the facilities were adequate. This year, the federal legislation that has defined our nation's transportation system since the 1950s is up for renewal. If we act now by writing our members of Congress, by supporting the Bicycle Federation and the League of American Wheelmen, and all of the other national organizations that are lobbying hard on this reauthorization, we could shape the federal government's commitment to bicycle transportation for the next 30 years. As I mentioned before, each of us has our own reasons for being a cyclist. You may like the exercise. You may like the thrill of racing. You may like the low cost of riding your bicycle. Or you may be like William Saroyan, who once wrote, "When I ride my bicycle, music begins to happen to me." Whatever your reason for cycling, please stand up for the bicycle. The comedian Lily Tomlin once said, "We're all in this together, by ourselves." When we leave this town meeting, this whole celebration of bicycling, we're going to have to act individually. And when we get out there, chances are we're going to feel a little bit outnumbered. But just remember that worldwide, bicycles outnumber cars 2 to 1. We are the silent majority. It was about 100 years ago when the League of American Wheelmen held its first National Congress of Bicyclists. That was back in the golden age of cycling, when every American aspired to be a cyclist. I believe that if we each do our part, we can get this country back on a bike. And we can start living by those values: good stewardship, equality, and peace that the bicycle represents. And let's do it now. Thank you.
We need to understand the sociology of transportation, how all of mankind, if you think of the most rudimentary forms of getting around, most people on this planet to this day depend on their feet for their primary transportation, sometimes being aided by mass transportation. If the people in these civilizations acquire any level of wealth, they will rise literally out of the dust and mud on the back of a burro, a donkey, or a mule. With greater wealth yet, onto the back of a horse. Even greater wealth, the purchase, the ownership of a bicycle. And ultimately, the point of having arrived in any civilization is having enough money to buy your own personal, motorized, horse-powered transport. We can see that all around us. The gentleman pictured here owns 4 automobiles. This is just one of them. This particular automobile cost more than my house. He's a childhood friend of mine who now owns the corporation and many art centers that you see pictured here. This car is part of his dress. It's part of the statement he makes in his business applications, in his social contacts. Not all of us, of course, will have that level of wealth. So we will take care of whatever vehicle we own. We will polish it. We will nurture it. For some people, woe be to the person who leans against that person's vehicle or in any way mars it. If you go to a very upscale neighborhood, in this case Beverly Hills, you realize that we no longer park the vehicle behind the house in a garage. The garage, in fact, is now a prominent part of the architecture of many homes out in front. But if you start to study them in these upscale neighborhoods, you realize people no longer park their cars in their garages. Today, they build these elaborate lawns and driveways in, and they show off their car literally 24 hours a day, whether they're driving it or whether they're parking it. They make sure it's seen. And if you were to step inside of one of these automobiles, you begin to realize we use our cars for a lot more things than transportation. It is a communication center. Some people depend on the car even today to walk their pets, whether it has 4 legs or no legs. If you think about the possibilities of a person who lives in a townhouse or complex like this, they step down into their automobile, they turn the key, start the engine, push a button, open a door, drive out, go to the bank and get some money in a drive-up window, drop off some dry cleaning in a drive-in window, and pull in and have some breakfast at another drive-in window, go to work, park the car, go up the stairs, and never once have they been in contact with real people at the real ground that they used to do 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. If by chance they decide to get out of that car and have breakfast inside, they still may be reminded of the heritage, of the romance of the automobile. The restaurateurs know of the fascination we have with the car, and so they celebrate it with their advertising for their products to draw us in, to make us feel comfortable in their establishment. So much so that people depend on their car for so much of what they do. They no longer walk, they no longer ride bikes, and therefore they no longer get the fitness they need. So they drive to a fitness center and go inside, pay a fee, and get the fitness that they've been missing all day long, all week long.
Okay, here's how it's structured, guys. I've got my 10 criteria for a transportation system 20 years in the future. What would you say we should do when the time frame is 20 years? You're not talking about tomorrow's pothole or 5 years, you're talking 20. Which directions you want to do things. And I have these criteria, or these arbiters. I want to start off tabula rasa. Let's write down our criteria. What should you be putting into it to make a decision? And then we write them down, and then I'll hand you out all the handouts, and then we can discuss things. You got a question?
Okay. We're talking about personal transportation as opposed to freight transportation. We're talking earlier.
We're talking everything.
Okay, well, I'll restrict my comments to that group I just mentioned. It's got to be ubiquitous. It goes within each reach of everybody. It has to be independent and not mass transit, because in mass transit, when one person wants to get off, everybody got to stop. It has to be guided but not necessarily tracked. And the guidance has to be in the vehicle rather than in the track, so that in a stream of vehicles knows to track.
Okay, let's look for criteria.
Okay.
I'm looking for 10. I'm looking for 10 words. You see this little column right here? This is. I want people to shout out these 10 words right now.
It's cheaper to run than to park.
Well, we got to put, and there's something you got to guess my words a little bit. But cheap. Let's work on. Okay, cost. Here we go.
Sustainable. It's got to be redistributable.
Pollution. Did I hear pollution?
Environment friendly.
Available. Yeah, I like that one.
Comfortable.
Let's not go too far.
That's all relative anyway.
Safe.
Equitable.
You don't like convenience?
Did I put it down there?
Available. Equitable.
Okay. All right. Let me focus. Let me give you you're a planner now. You're in the office. You've got politicians to look at. You've got total infrastructure decisions to make. You're doing great. I mean, you're 7 out of 10 right there, guys.
Can't say anything about speed if you want to make that.
No, it's not on my list. Speed's not so big. No, maybe.
It's determined in mode choice.
I have it under a different name. I have it under a different name, I guess.
Now when a bike will get there faster, they still take the car. Bicycles are the psychological exception.
How about people that take the plane when the train would have been faster? Downtown to downtown.
All right.
I'll tell you one reason why. I could get my bike on the plane and Amtrak wouldn't take it.
Time. Okay, people keep calling for speed time. I'll put it down. Land use. All right. She said equitable too. All righty. We're missing one. It's very interesting. You get this cross section of people here. If you took out next 100 people went whizzing down some road and asked them to do this, I guarantee that before they said hardly any of these, they would have said this other one. When you ask somebody the future of transportation to the average American, what do they think about?
Monorail.
Gas, flexibility.
Gas? Gas. Gas. What about the availability of gas?
Nearest to gas.
Fuel efficient.
I'll just put it up in the word that we've been using the last decade. Oil.
Once again, it's good to see so many people here on such a glorious afternoon, and I know how nice it is out there because Marcia Lowe and I were out biking earlier this morning and just enjoying the wonders of this place. And it's great to see so many cyclists in one place working together and enjoying cycling and working to build for a better cycling future. I think one of the aspects of creating a more bicycle-friendly future in our communities is in integrating bicycles with public transportation in our communities so that people have more options, more freedom to choose the most efficient way to make trips within their communities, to reduce our dependence on the automobile, which for many people right now we've got no choice about because of the way our land use is set up. And bicycle access to transit is in fact one way to adapt our public transportation systems to the low-density sprawled land use that our auto-dependent systems of transportation have given us in the last several decades. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from other countries, and I'm going to show you some slides from a variety of countries, some from the U.S., that'll illustrate some of the points about how bicycle access transit systems work. One of the big problems we face in many communities is bicycle hostile atmospheres. You know, things like don't park your bike here. You know, there's no safe place to park your bike. Vandalism is a problem in many communities in the United States, and theft. The bicycle theft rates per capita in the United States are roughly 10 times higher than they were in Japan in the 1970s and early 80s, when the bicycle access to transit just exploded in that country. Bicycle theft rates in the United States are probably twice as high as they are even in the Netherlands, which has a fairly high theft rate problem. And this difficulty is compounded by the fact that in many places there just isn't something safe you can lock your bike up to unless you've got good parking meters or good poles or somebody's provided some racks. But even there you're subject to vandalism unless you've got lockers or a guarded bicycle parking garage. And unfortunately we have none of those in North America yet, although I think within the next 5 or 6 years we'll probably find some communities that start to develop these. Do you? With a guarded bicycle parking garage? Oh, yes. Yeah, lockers. They're widespread lockers. Yeah, right. It's the guarded bicycle parking garages that have yet to be found here in America. If one travels in communities across Europe, one finds a lot of places where bicycles are used as an access mode to bus transportation. This is in Malmö, Sweden. You see bikes parked out at a major park and ride stop. But it's a bike and ride stop rather than a car parking area. One of the difficulties of park and ride actually is that it leads to the creation of these very large parking areas at transit stations, which are the very areas that have the greatest potential to support all kinds of economic development, both jobs and housing, with less dependence on the car. And so the United States has spent probably several $billion over the last couple of decades making our public transportation systems dependent on the automobile. I mean, think about it. Doesn't quite make sense. But bicycle access systems, on the other hand, take about 1/35 the space of a car parking system at transit stations. So you can get a lot more people to the transit system in a lot less space, at a lot less cost, with a bike and ride system, and provide coverage, access coverage from housing to the transit station or from the transit station to nearby employment in an area that's roughly 35 or 37 times larger by bicycle access than by pedestrian access, and that's roughly comparable between bicycle access and automobile access in terms of the average distance people travel to get to the transit stop by these different modes of transportation.
Now this is the bicycle boulevard. Now Bicycle Boulevard actually is just an ordinary street, and there are periodic barriers. Actually we have it right now, it's 2 miles, it's a residential area, and it already had one natural barrier where there was a creek with a very narrow old footbridge. And so it made the perfect demonstration project to make it into a bicycle boulevard. And this was the temporary barrier, and I'm showing you the slide because I just love that sign. In fact, that picture, not this particular slide, but a picture of it has been shown in the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times and in the syndicated press. The middle block there, the concrete block, is so that the fire engines can cross over it. But evidently some cars have tried too, because that concrete is really scraped. And this is the permanent barrier that's been devised now. And it was determined that we don't really need the accept bike signs, except that I'm still trying to get something there, because it really tells a message when you say do not enter, but you can if you're on a bicycle. You know, it's a real. Anyway, another feature of the bicycle boulevard is that the stop signs protect the bicyclists on the bicycle boulevard. In other words, the cross streets have the stop signs, except at the major arterials.
Can an emergency vehicle enter that street?
Well, there's a padlock at the bottom of the bollard, and the city crews have the key to the lock. It's a regular padlock. Every once in a while, it's missing. Somebody's fooled around with it, and the bollard might be lying around in the street. But we report it, and it quickly gets put back.
The residents must come in on a cross street?
Well, there are several. They can go for several blocks at a time. So within a 2-mile stretch, there are only 3 barriers, in essence. 2 barriers like this, and one's the creek with a bridge over it, which I'll show you. But in case you think that all we at the council do, or did, was to say, sure, we'll have a bicycle boulevard and put it in, we're trying to extend it to the downtown, because right now it doesn't go as far as that. It's still in the residential area on both ends. And we need a signal to cross a major intersection, a very heavily used arterial. And one of the neighbors got all excited about this, because we also need a barrier, incidentally, some sort of barrier, if we turn all the stop signs around all the way to downtown, to prevent that from being used heavily by automobiles. So it will need some kind of a barrier or limitation of automobiles. And she lives on the street, and she wants to drive downtown. She only lives about, a mile away or something from the downtown, but she wants to drive there. So she's gotten the neighborhood all revved up, flyers and spending time, money even on petitions, and having somebody stand at the signal 1 block down about meetings let's come out and pose this awful idea of another signal. The bicyclists, after all, can go 1 block out of the way and go on this other street. That happens at bike lanes, the kind of bike lanes that shared with cars that I showed before. But it's interesting, at one of these community meetings, she said, well, the cars have a terrible time turning left onto that street because of the heavy traffic. And I'm not going to let her forget she made that comment, because it's okay for the bikes, but she doesn't want to do it in a car because there are too many cars coming in the other direction.
I think a lot of times there's just a few volunteers doing a tremendous amount of work, and volunteers tend to get burnt out, and a lot of times things don't get done simply because of the lack of coordination and the lack of time and energy in volunteers. And it gets back to my original point, is that given how the huge bureaucracies we have and so many things going on, as a volunteer it's very, very hard to be effective. So what I hope to do, what I hope to give you now is sort of a blueprint of how, as a volunteer with not that much work, you can be really effective. Again, having said that citizen involvement is really the key to winning any issue. Just give you a few thoughts on what 26 people should do. When I meet with volunteer groups or government affairs committees or the political arm of whatever you want to call it, frequently the problems I run into, again, are few people doing a lot of the work, and also certain lack of direction in terms of knowing where they're going. And I'm a real firm believer in developing a work plan. And I write one for myself every year. I have all the people who work for me write one every year. And I guess what I want to do is start out by suggesting that as a volunteer, and as a volunteer working in a group, you also need to have a work plan. And I like the old saying that if you don't know where you're going, any plan will do. And I think with volunteer groups are particularly, you know, subject to that kind of a problem of not knowing exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and also not focusing on real goals and objectives. And when I put together a work plan, I make sure that every objective that we have is something measurable that has a number on it. So having said that, I'm going to go give you sort of a list of what 26 people could do. Assume that you have 26 advocates and you want to make your city bicycle friendly, and what are you going to do? So you're putting together a work plan, and here's just a couple of things you can do. First of all, if you look in the paper and you look in the public hearings, about once a week there's a public hearing that's important enough that there needs to be a bicyclist there in a big urban area. So if you have 26 people, and you all commit to going to 2 public hearings a year, you will have a bicyclist at every public hearing. What's important about that is a couple things. First of all, if you just have 5 or 6 people showing up at every public hearing, you can have 2 negative side effects. One is you're going to burn out those 5 or 6 people, and secondly, their faces are going to get real old, and immediately everything those 5 or 6 people say are going to be discounted because it looks like it's just a small special interest group. On the other hand, if you have only 26 people and each of them commits to 2 public hearings a year, means you have a cyclist and basically a different face at a public hearing once a week in your community over an entire year. And the impact you're starting to have is going to be tremendous. Because what you're telling then the elected officials who quite often hold public hearings, or the directors of departments, you're telling them that they cannot have a public meeting. They cannot have a public meeting, and they're not and get away with not dealing with the bicycle issue. And because they know ahead of time that there's going to be cyclists there, they're going to be asking them questions. They will be prepared. 8 out of 10 times, the cycling issue will already be incorporated into the project because then they know they're going to have to ask about it. A second thing, and this you could put into your work plan, is you have 26 volunteers. You have them all commit, again, to write 2 letters a year. And I have been just amazed, even working in Seattle where we have a lot of good activists, at how few letters we actually get related to bicycle stuff. There are city council people that I'm not sure have ever gotten a letter, and there are other people who maybe have gotten letters, but probably, again, not more than 10 different people in 6 or 7 years. Again, put it in your work plan. It's something you can measure. When you write a letter, you need a volunteer coordinator to keep track of this so that a copy goes. But at the end of the year, you have 26 people, you have 52 letters, you get 2 letters out a week on some project related to bicycling. And that's a lot. We get very, very few letters. You know, the other thing that's always amazed me, too, is that in 7 years in working in the city, I have never gotten a letter from an environmental group. And, you know what, this is an aside, but one of my criticisms of the environmental movement is they focused all out in the hills and the trees, which is important, but all the pollution is coming from the urban areas, but we never hear from environmentalists in urban areas. They simply, for the most part, do not exist within the decision-making process in the transportation field that I'm in. They simply are not there. They're gone. And so, again, with 26 people, each committing only 2 letters a year, you can have a tremendous impact. Third thing to put on your work plan with 26 people is to have all 26 people agree to go to 2 meetings with elected officials. And again, it's amazing how few cycling advocates have ever met with elected officials and how few elected officials have ever met with cyclists. The other thing that's been surprising to me is how relatively easy it is to get appointments with, certainly at the city council level, the county council level, especially if you represent an organization. And frequently, it's a tandem kind of thing. First you come in with the letters and public meetings so they kind of know who your organization is, and then follow it up with a meeting. And it's always good when you go to a meeting, don't go alone. Go with 2 or 3 people and make sure that these 2 or 3 people represent different groups and organizations. Don't go in with 3 sort of club cyclists who all look alike and bicycle in the same way. You need a neighborhood person. You know, have some diversity in terms of who those 2 or 3 people are.
I think it was a good thing to see the recreational cyclists, the die-hard LAW members get a little more involved in the advocacy issues. And the flip side of that would be that the die-hard advocacy people got more involved in the recreation aspects of cycling.
One thing we definitely proved is that it's possible to attend a professional conference and have a heck of a lot of fun at the same time. We scheduled no morning workshops, nothing. There was no business to do before 1:30 in the afternoon. We expected everyone to get out and ride, and get out and ride they did. City and county and state bicycle facility planners and environmental managers and transportation department employees were out on morning rides every day. There weren't people milling around. This place was a ghost town until sometime afternoon. Everyone was out on their bicycle. That to me was very exciting. So often rallies are nothing but bicycling and conferences are nothing but talk. We managed to put both together and make it work.
We exposed people to a lot of things that were more political than they're used to, but the overwhelming response was really positive. I think people appreciated that mix.